5 men attacked a billionaire CEO in a restaurant. Black waitress's hidden skill shocked all. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was a night like any other at the high-end Veritas Lounge in downtown San Francisco. The dimly lit restaurant, known for its extravagant decor and celebrity clientele, buzzed with quiet chatter as wealthy patrons enjoyed their meals. In the far corner, at a table with a sweeping view of the city skyline, sat Richard Kessler, a billionaire CEO who had built his empire in the tech industry. He was known for his ruthless business deals and cold demeanor. As he sat surrounded by his colleagues, little did he know that his night was about to take an unexpected turn. Just moments after the first course had been served, a group of 5 men entered the restaurant. Their presence was immediately noticed by the staff. They were dressed in casual clothing, but their body language was anything but casual. They moved through the dining area with a sense of purpose, their eyes scanning the room like predators. As they approached Kessler's table, the atmosphere shifted. The hum of conversation died down, and a sense of tension filled the air. The men weren't here for dinner. No, they had a different agenda. One of the men, a tall figure with a scar across his face, leaned over to Kessler's table. His voice was low, but it carried through the sudden silence. "You've been making deals that don't sit well with certain people," he said. "It's time you paid the price." Kessler remained calm, not a hint of fear in his eyes. He had dealt with threats before, but something about this felt different. The tension in the air grew thicker. The other 4 men stood behind their leader, blocking any possible escape routes for the billionaire. Kessler's staff, who had been trained to handle high-profile clients, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. But no one moved. Everyone was paralyzed by fear. All eyes were on Kessler, waiting for him to react. But there was no time for him to make a move. Just as the men closed in, ready to strike, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the room, a waitress named Naomi Carter, who had been quietly attending to her tables, noticed the commotion. Naomi was a woman of few words, but her instincts were sharp, honed from years of working in the city's most exclusive establishments. She had seen her fair share of drama, but nothing quite like this. As the 5 men continued their intimidating approach, Naomi's eyes flicked to the kitchen door, where she quickly grabbed a heavy rolling pin. She didn't hesitate. With a calm but determined stride, she moved toward the group, her every step measured. The men didn't notice her at first, too focused on Kessler. But Naomi wasn't just another waitress. As she approached, she tapped the scarred man on the shoulder. He turned, startled by her sudden presence. Without a word, Naomi swung the rolling pin with precision, catching him squarely on the side of his head. The impact was enough to send him stumbling backwards. The other 4 men froze, unsure of how to respond to a woman who wasn't afraid to fight back. Naomi didn't stop there. She grabbed a nearby tray and used it to block a blow aimed at her. With a swift movement, she disarmed one of the men who had pulled out a knife. The room was in shock. Naomi had just taken control of the situation with nothing more than her quick thinking and a few simple tools. Kessler, still seated at his table, watched in disbelief as the men scrambled to regain their composure. The staff, who had been too terrified to intervene, now looked to Naomi, who had just saved them all. Naomi stood tall, not an ounce of fear in her. She had done what no one else could. She had stopped the attack cold in its tracks. And in that moment, Richard Kessler, the man who had made billions through calculated moves, realized that sometimes the most powerful people in the room weren't the ones with the money or the status. They were the ones with the courage to act when it mattered most. The room fell into an eerie silence as Naomi stood poised, still, holding the rolling pin that had just brought one of the attackers to his knees. The 5 men were no longer sure of their next move. Their confidence shattered in the face of an unexpected challenge. The sharpness of Naomi's actions had thrown them off balance. The billionaire CEO, Richard Kessler, who had sat frozen in his chair moments ago, now watched with wide eyes. His jaw tightened as he processed what had just happened. Naomi Carter, a waitress from a small restaurant in New Orleans, had just single-handedly neutralized a group of armed attackers without so much as breaking a sweat. It wasn't just the fight that had left everyone stunned. It was her calm resolve, her instinct to protect, and her ability to act decisively when no one else dared. Kessler couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This wasn't what he had expected when he walked into the restaurant that evening. He had expected to have a quiet dinner, discuss business, and make deals as usual. But now, here he was, watching a woman who had just saved his life. The men who had attacked him were slowly backing away, their arrogance quickly turning to fear. They realized they were no match for Naomi, who seemed completely unfazed by the chaos around her. One of them, the leader with the scar on his face, took a step forward, but Naomi was ready. She held up her hand, signaling for him to stop. Her eyes were fierce, calculating, and calm. She had them right where she wanted them. "I don't want any more trouble," Naomi said, her voice steady and clear. "But if you want to leave this room alive, I suggest you walk out right now." The leader hesitated, looking at his men, unsure of what to do. The standoff felt like it would last forever, but the fear in their eyes was evident. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the scarred man nodded to his crew. "Let's go," he muttered. They turned and quickly exited the restaurant, leaving Naomi standing in the middle of the room, still holding the rolling pin. The tension in the air slowly began to dissipate. Kessler was the first to speak, his voice rough but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his eyes meeting Naomi's. "You saved my life." Naomi didn't respond right away. She set the rolling pin down carefully and walked over to the bar, wiping her hands on her apron. Her job was done, but the night was far from over. She didn't want recognition or praise. She wasn't in this for the glory. She was just doing what needed to be done. But as the weight of the situation sank in, Naomi felt something she hadn't expected, a deep sense of pride. She had done something extraordinary, something no one had ever believed she was capable of. And now, the room was watching her, the very people who had ignored her before. The other guests, who had been too afraid to intervene, were slowly starting to whisper among themselves. Some were recording videos on their phones. Others were nodding in disbelief. Naomi's actions were already becoming the talk of the night. Kessler, still processing everything, stood up and walked toward her. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice softer now. "You've got skills. The way you handled yourself, it was impressive." Naomi simply nodded. She wasn't looking for accolades. She just wanted to get back to work. But Kessler wasn't done yet. "Listen, I owe you more than just a thank you," he said, his tone shifting. "I want to make it up to you. I can offer you a job, something that'll change your life. How would you like to come work for me? I can use someone like you on my team." Naomi looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. She wasn't sure what to make of the offer, but she could tell it wasn't just empty words. Kessler wasn't one to make promises lightly. She paused for a moment before speaking. "I appreciate the offer, but that's not what I need," Naomi replied, her voice firm. "What I need is respect. What I need is for people like you to stop underestimating people like me." Kessler's expression faltered for a moment. It was clear that Naomi had struck a chord. She wasn't interested in being anyone's charity case. She didn't want a handout or a favor. She wanted to be recognized for who she was, not for what others thought she could be. The room grew quiet again, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Finally, Kessler nodded slowly, as if coming to a realization. "You're right," he said, his voice steady. "You don't need me. But I'll tell you what. I'll make sure that people know exactly who you are and what you're capable of. You've got my word on that." Naomi didn't smile. She didn't need to. She knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger than herself. The night had been a turning point, not just for Kessler, but for her as well. As she turned to walk away, she knew one thing for sure. She would never be underestimated again. The following day, Naomi Carter woke up to a world that was suddenly different. The quiet New Orleans streets outside her apartment were still, the calm after the storm of the night before. The heavy rain had cleared, leaving only damp streets and the soft hum of a new day. She sat at her kitchen table, staring into the cup of lukewarm coffee in front of her. Her thoughts, however, were far from the quiet of the morning. They were on last night, on what had happened in that restaurant, and what it meant for her now. Naomi wasn't one for attention. She had always lived her life on the periphery, unnoticed and underestimated. But last night, everything had changed. She had stood up when no one else would, and she had done something that no one, least of all herself, expected. And now, the consequences of that action were starting to hit her. She could still feel the weight of the CEO's eyes on her, the way he had looked at her after the fight was over. Richard Kessler had offered her a job with him, in his company. It was an offer she knew she should be considering, something that could change her life. But it wasn't that simple. Naomi wasn't about to let a moment of heroism turn into a lifetime of servitude. She wasn't interested in being someone's charity case. She wasn't interested in being given anything. She wanted to earn it, on her own terms. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the recognition. It was about proving to herself and to everyone else that she was more than what people saw. That night in the restaurant had been about more than saving a man's life. It had been about taking control of her own story. Naomi had been through too much in her life to just let others define her. She had grown up in the heart of the city, where survival was everything. Her mother had worked tirelessly to keep a roof over their heads, always teaching Naomi the value of hard work and dignity. Her father, long gone, had left them with nothing but empty promises. Naomi had always been the one to pick up the pieces, to make something out of the nothing she had been given. It had been a struggle. Every day was a challenge, balancing work, school, and the weight of responsibility she had carried since she was young. But now, she was starting to see that maybe, just maybe, all that hard work was about to pay off. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Naomi glanced at the screen and saw Richard Kessler's name. She had been expecting this call, but she didn't know if she was ready to answer it. Taking a deep breath, she swiped to answer. "Hello, Richard," she said, keeping her voice calm, steady. "Naomi." His voice came through, deep and measured. "I hope you're doing okay after everything that happened last night." She nodded, though he couldn't see her. "I'm fine," she replied. "I just did what I had to do." "Listen," Kessler said, his tone shifting. "I know you weren't looking for anything from me. But what you did last night, what you showed me, was more than impressive. I don't make offers like this lightly, but I want you to come work with me. I can make sure you never have to worry about money again. I can give you a future, Naomi." There was a long pause before Naomi spoke. "You don't understand," she said softly. "It's not about the money. It's about respect. It's about being seen for who I am. I don't need you to save me, Richard. I'm not some project. I'm not your charity case." She could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, the silence hanging between them. Then, slowly he spoke. "I get it," he said, his voice low. "And I'm not asking you to be anyone's charity. I'm asking you because I believe in what you did last night. I believe in you. But the offer's on the table, Naomi. It's yours if you want it." Naomi stood up from the table, walking to the window and looking out at the city she had always called home. Her decision wasn't an easy one, but she knew deep down that this wasn't just about her. It was about proving to everyone who had ever underestimated her that she was more than capable of standing on her own 2 feet. She had never let anyone define her before, and she wasn't about to start now. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady. "But don't expect me to follow anyone's rules but my own." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Kessler spoke, his voice a little softer. "I respect that, Naomi. I'll leave the decision to you. Just know that the offer stands." She hung up the phone, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made her decision. Naomi Carter wasn't looking for a handout, but she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away either. Whatever came next, she would take it on her terms. Naomi Carter sat at her kitchen table, the phone still warm in her hand. The conversation with Richard Kessler echoed in her mind, his offer hanging in the air like an unspoken challenge. "I'll think about it," she had said, but deep down, Naomi knew she was not just considering a job offer. She was considering what it meant to step into a world that had never been hers. A world of power, privilege, and promises. The streets outside were quiet, almost too quiet. It was early morning, and Naomi had always loved the stillness before the city fully woke up. The silence gave her space to think, to reflect on everything that had happened since the night in Veritas Lounge. The attack, the 5 men, the rolling pin, and most of all, the look in Kessler's eyes. He had seen her, really seen her. That was the moment that changed everything. Not the rolling pin or the fight. It was when Kessler saw Naomi for who she truly was, a woman with the courage to act when it mattered most. But now, Naomi had to make a decision. A decision that would shape her future. The phone call had been only the beginning. The question was, what kind of future did she want? Did she want to continue in the shadows, working tirelessly but unnoticed? Or did she dare to step into the spotlight, to claim a space at the table that had always been reserved for people like Kessler? She leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes. The answer wasn't clear, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to let anyone define her again. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a message from her mother. "How are you, baby girl? I saw the news last night. I'm proud of you." Naomi smiled softly. Her mother had always been her rock, the one person who believed in her no matter what. But Naomi had never wanted to disappoint her. Her mother had sacrificed so much to give her the life she had now. The least Naomi could do was make sure her sacrifices meant something. The thought of Kessler's offer brought her back to the reality she was facing. Was she really ready to take on that kind of responsibility? The world of billionaires, power brokers, and high-stakes deals? Naomi wasn't sure. But she couldn't ignore the feeling deep down that she was meant for something more. As the day wore on, Naomi made up her mind. She would take the meeting. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back. If Kessler truly believed in her, if he truly saw something in her, then she owed it to herself to see where this could go. But she would do it on her terms. She wouldn't be a pawn in his game. She would play by her own rules. The next morning, Naomi found herself standing in the lobby of Kessler's sleek office building in downtown San Francisco. She had dressed carefully, a tailored black dress that made her feel confident, yet not out of place. As she stepped into the elevator, she felt the weight of the moment. This was it, the opportunity that could change everything. She could feel the eyes of the world on her, even though no one was watching. When the elevator doors opened, Naomi stepped into the penthouse office. Kessler was already waiting for her, a glass of water in his hand. He rose when he saw her, a slight smile on his face. "Naomi," he said, his voice warm. "I'm glad you came." "I'm here to listen," she said, her tone firm, yet polite. "I'm not here for your money or your charity. I'm here because I believe in what I can do." Kessler nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I respect that," he said, motioning for her to sit. "I don't offer jobs like this lightly. I've seen something in you that I don't see in many people. You have the kind of strength and integrity that's rare in this business." Naomi sat down, the chair feeling oddly comfortable beneath her. "So what exactly are you offering?" she asked. "What do you want me to do?" Kessler took a deep breath. "I need someone who can handle high-pressure situations, someone who's not afraid to make tough decisions, someone who can think on their feet and act when it matters. Someone like you." Naomi didn't flinch. She had already made up her mind. "I'm not your fixer, Kessler," she said. "I'm not here to clean up your mess. I'm here to make a difference." Kessler's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no sign of anger. Instead, he leaned forward. "That's exactly what I need. Someone who's not afraid to challenge the status quo. Someone who can lead." Naomi felt a flicker of something in her chest. Could this really be the opportunity she had been waiting for? Kessler wasn't offering her just a job. He was offering her a chance to shape the future. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. But Naomi was done being afraid. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice steady. "But don't mistake this for a favor. I'll take your offer if and only if it's something that aligns with my values." Kessler smiled, a hint of respect in his eyes. "You've got my word," he said. "This isn't a game for me, Naomi. It's a chance for both of us to make a difference." Naomi nodded, standing up to leave. The world outside was still the same, but she knew she had just taken the first step towards something bigger than herself. Naomi Carter walked out of the elevator and into the gleaming lobby of Kessler Tech, the headquarters of Richard Kessler's empire. The building was everything Naomi had imagined, sleek, modern, and undeniably powerful. The walls were made of glass, reflecting the skyline of San Francisco, a city she had always admired but never felt a part of. She had spent the morning wrestling with her decision, but now, stepping into Kessler's world, there was no turning back. She had agreed to meet with him. It was a decision that felt right in the moment, but she still wasn't sure what it meant for her future. As she entered the conference room, Kessler was waiting for her, as composed and confident as ever. His usual business suit seemed to add to the aura of control he exuded. Naomi, in her black dress, stood out in a way that felt new. She wasn't here to blend in, and she wasn't here to please anyone. She was here for herself. "Good to see you again, Naomi," Kessler said, standing up to shake her hand. He smiled warmly. but Naomi could see the sharpness in his eyes. He wasn't just making small talk. I'm glad you decided to come back. Naomi nodded, giving him a polite smile in return. You made me an offer. I'm here to see if it's worth my time. She replied, her tone steady. I'm not interested in just another job. I want something meaningful. Kessler leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the surface of the table. I understand. And I respect that. That's why I wanted you to come on board. I'm not looking for someone who will just follow orders. I need someone who can challenge me, who can think differently. Naomi studied him for a moment. His words were carefully chosen, but Naomi wasn't easily swayed by flattery. She had learned long ago to read people, and Kessler's offer still felt like a test. What exactly would I be doing here? She asked, her voice cool but curious. You'd be part of a new initiative I'm launching, Kessler explained. It's a project focused on innovation, but it's also about shaking things up. We need someone who can think outside the box. Someone who won't be afraid to question the system and push boundaries. I think you're the right fit. Naomi took a deep breath. She had heard words like this before. Everyone promised change. Everyone promised innovation. But action spoke louder than words. And why me? She asked. You don't know anything about my work, my background, or my qualifications. Kessler's eyes gleamed with understanding. I know you, Naomi, he said, his voice low. I've been watching you. The way you handled the situation at the restaurant. The way you stood your ground. That's what I need. Not just a smart person, but someone who knows when to act, when to speak up, and when to stay quiet. Naomi felt the weight of his gaze. This wasn't just a business proposition. This was something personal for him. Something he believed in. She wasn't sure if she was ready to dive into it, but she had to admit. Kessler's words stirred something in her. Maybe it was time to step out of the shadows and into a new role, one that challenged her to grow, to think bigger, and to prove to herself what she was truly capable of. All right, she said, her voice steady. I'm interested. But on one condition. Kessler raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What condition? I do things my way, she said firmly. No micromanaging. No second-guessing. If you want me on your team, you need to trust me to make the decisions that are right. Kessler leaned forward, his expression serious but impressed. Deal, he said, extending his hand. Naomi shook it without hesitation. This was her moment. The offer wasn't just about money, power, or prestige. It was about control. It was about taking charge of her own future. Naomi didn't need anyone's validation, but Kessler's offer was more than a chance to rise. It was an opportunity to prove to herself and the world that she belonged. She wasn't just another waitress, another statistic, another person overlooked. She was Naomi Carter, and she was ready to make her mark. As she walked out of the conference room, the weight of her decision began to settle in. She had made the right choice. She knew it. The next chapter of her life had just begun, and there was no turning back. Naomi Carter stepped into the sleek, modern office of Kessler Tech with a newfound sense of purpose. The building had always felt intimidating from the outside, but now, standing within its polished walls, Naomi felt like she belonged here. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and nerves as she walked through the hallways, past glass-paneled offices where employees worked in a flurry of focused concentration. Everything felt so different. Her shoes clicked sharply against the marble floors as she approached the executive suite, where she was scheduled to meet with Richard Kessler for the first time since accepting his offer. When she entered the office, Kessler was already seated behind his massive, minimalist desk. He looked up and smiled, a welcoming gesture, but Naomi could see the spark of challenge in his eyes. He had big expectations, and Naomi wasn't the type of woman who would back down from them. Glad you could make it, he said, his voice warm but firm. This is where the real work starts. I hope you're ready. Naomi didn't hesitate. She sat down across from him, her posture straight and confident. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. I didn't come here to waste time. I came here to make an impact. Kessler's smile widened slightly, and for the first time, Naomi saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. Good, he replied, his voice quieter now, almost as if he were testing her. We've got a project that's going to shake things up, and I think you're just the person to help us do it. He slid a tablet across the desk to her, and she looked at it curiously. This is a new initiative we're launching. It's about disrupting the market, but we need someone with fresh ideas, someone who isn't afraid to challenge the status quo. That's where you come in. Naomi nodded, studying the tablet. It displayed a series of graphs, figures, and complex data, all pointing to a new direction in the tech industry. "What exactly do you want me to do?" she asked, her mind already racing through possibilities. Kessler leaned forward, his hands folded together. "I need you to lead this project. It's about more than just numbers. It's about pushing boundaries, about doing what others won't do. I've seen how you handle yourself under pressure, Naomi. I need that kind of drive on my team." Naomi took a moment to process his words. Lead the project? It was a big responsibility, but it wasn't the first time she had been asked to take charge. She had worked her entire life to get to this point, constantly proving that she was capable of more than people gave her credit for. She was ready for this challenge. "I can do it," she said firmly, looking him directly in the eyes. "But I need full control. I need to make the decisions that will shape this project. If you want my best work, you'll have to trust me to lead it." Kessler didn't flinch at her request. Instead, he nodded, his gaze steady. "Done. But know this. If you're going to lead this, you'll have to take risks. There will be setbacks, and you'll face resistance, both inside and outside this company. You'll have to be ready to fight for every inch." Naomi felt a surge of determination. She had faced challenges her whole life, growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, working countless shifts just to make ends meet. She had learned to fight for what she wanted. This wouldn't be any different. "I'm not afraid of a fight," she said, her voice unwavering. "If anything, I'm used to it." Kessler smiled, this time with genuine approval. "I like that. I'll give you the tools and the resources you need. The rest is up to you. Just remember, this is a high-stakes game. The choices you make will have consequences." Naomi nodded. She wasn't afraid of consequences. She knew that sometimes, the only way to get what you wanted was to take risks. She wasn't just here to play the game. She was here to change it. As she left Kessler's office, she felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The door was open, and all she had to do was walk through it. She had no doubt that the road ahead would be tough, but she was ready. The world had never been kind to her, but Naomi Carter had always believed that she could carve out her own path. And now, with Kessler's trust and the resources of his company behind her, she would do just that. She was ready to take the risks, to make the hard decisions, and to lead a project that could change everything. Naomi's journey was just beginning, and there was no turning back. Naomi Carter stepped into the bustling, open-plan office of Kessler Tech, the weight of her new role settling on her shoulders. The decision she had made in Kessler's office now felt more real, more urgent. She had taken on the responsibility to lead a project that could alter the course of not just the company, but her own life. The sleek, modern space buzzed with the energy of people who were clearly at the top of their game. She had barely been in the office for an hour before she was called into the first meeting of her new team. It was a team of high-level executives, some of them already established names in the industry. Naomi felt a surge of nerves, but she quickly pushed it down. This was her moment. She had to prove herself. As she walked into the meeting room, the chatter died down. The eyes of the room turned toward her, a mix of curiosity and skepticism in the air. Naomi wasn't just another face at the table. She was the leader now. "Naomi, welcome to the team," Kessler said, his voice warm but commanding. He motioned for her to take the seat at the head of the table. Naomi did so without hesitation. "Thank you," she replied, keeping her tone firm and confident. "Let's get down to business." She could feel the weight of their eyes on her as she looked around the table. Most of the people there had years of experience, far more than her. But Naomi wasn't intimidated. She knew what she brought to the table was just as valuable, if not more. She had something none of them had, the ability to think outside the box, to see things from a different perspective. That was the strength Kessler had seen in her, and that was what would drive this project forward. "We're here to disrupt," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We're here to create something new, something that's never been done before. And I need everyone here to be all in. No half measures. No playing it safe. If we're going to change the market, we're going to have to take risks." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. For a moment, she could almost feel the tension. She knew that some of the people in the room were used to playing it safe. They had their careers, their reputations. But Naomi wasn't about to play by their rules. She had already spent too much of her life being overlooked. This was her time to make her mark. Slowly, one of the executives, a middle-aged man in a sharp suit, raised his hand. "And what exactly are you proposing?" he asked, his tone skeptical. Naomi didn't flinch. She had expected this. We're proposing a new tech product, she began, her mind already focused on the task ahead. But this won't be just another product. We're talking about something that will change the way people interact with technology. It's a risk, yes, but it's also an opportunity. An opportunity to be a leader in an industry that is still ripe for disruption. The skepticism in the room was palpable, but Naomi didn't back down. She knew what she was talking about. She had done the research, and she knew the market inside and out. She had a vision, and she wasn't about to let anyone talk her out of it. As she continued to lay out her plan, she could see the executives starting to warm to the idea. They were beginning to see her vision, to understand the passion behind it. But there were still questions. There were always questions. One of the younger members of the team, a woman who looked like she was fresh out of college, spoke up. How do we know this will work? She asked. How can we be sure people will buy into this? Naomi smiled, a calm, confident smile. We won't know for sure until we try, she said. But I know this. If we don't take the risk, someone else will. And then we'll be left behind. The market is waiting for something like this. We just have to be the ones to give it to them. The room was quiet again. But this time, it was a quiet of contemplation, not skepticism. Naomi had made her case, and she had done it with conviction. Kessler, who had been watching her closely, gave a small nod of approval. All right, Naomi, he said, breaking the silence. You've got the team's attention. Let's see what you can do. Naomi stood up, feeling a surge of determination. Thank you, she said. We're going to make this happen. We're going to change everything. As the meeting ended and the team began to disperse, Naomi felt a sense of pride. She had come a long way from the woman who was once just a waitress in a restaurant. She had a vision now, and this was only the beginning. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Naomi had faced challenges her entire life. She wasn't afraid of hard work. She wasn't afraid of the risks. Because this time, the risks would lead her to something greater than she had ever imagined. Naomi sat in the corner of her new office, the same office where she had been handed the reins to a project that could change the industry. The city skyline outside the window was a reminder of everything she had worked for, everything she had overcome to get here. Her mind raced as she reviewed the figures on her tablet, the plan she had outlined for the tech initiative, and the new team she was now responsible for leading. The pressure was mounting, but she wasn't the type to buckle under it. This was what she had fought for. The next few weeks were filled with meetings, deadlines, and long nights as Naomi began to carve out her place in the world of Kessler Tech. The project was progressing well, but not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, moments when her team questioned the direction she was taking, and moments when Naomi had to prove that her vision was worth fighting for. She knew that this wasn't just about proving herself to Kessler. It was about proving herself to everyone who had ever underestimated her. One evening, after a long day of brainstorming and planning, Naomi stood at the window of her office, looking out over the city. The lights below flickered like stars, distant and unyielding. The weight of the responsibility on her shoulders felt heavy, but she couldn't afford to falter. She had made it this far, and there was no turning back. Just as she was about to sit down to review the latest reports, her phone buzzed with a message from Kessler. Meet me in the conference room. We need to talk. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. She had seen him earlier that day, but she knew that tone. It wasn't just a casual check-in. It was serious. She quickly gathered her things and made her way to the conference room. As she entered, Kessler stood by the large glass table, his posture as commanding as ever. There was a flicker of concern in his eyes, but his face remained stoic. Naomi, he said, motioning for her to sit. We've hit a roadblock with the project. I've been getting feedback, and I think it's time we reassess the direction. Naomi's stomach tightened. She had worked tirelessly on this project. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And now, to hear that it might not be the right path felt like a punch to the gut. What kind of feedback? She asked, her voice steady despite the unease creeping up her spine. It's not about the tech. It's about the people, Kessler replied. We've got key investors pulling back, and there's pressure from the board. They want results. Fast. And they're questioning whether you can deliver. Naomi took a deep breath. She had been in tough situations before, but this was different. This was her moment to prove that she belonged at the table with the people who called the shots. I'm not here to rush a product to market just to please investors, she said, her voice firm. I'm here to build something that lasts. If they can't see the value in that, then maybe they're not the right partners for this project. Kessler studied her for a long moment, and for the first time, Naomi saw a flicker of respect in his eyes. You're right, he said slowly. But we can't ignore the pressure. If we don't act fast, we risk losing everything. Naomi's mind raced. She knew what he was asking. He wanted her to compromise, to cut corners, to meet the expectations of the board. But she couldn't do that. She had made a promise to herself to never compromise her values for the sake of quick success. If we lose everything, then it wasn't meant to be, she said, her voice unwavering. But I'm not going to sacrifice what we've built for the sake of appeasing people who don't understand the bigger picture. Kessler's eyes softened, and for a moment, Naomi saw the man who had built his empire from nothing. I admire your conviction, Naomi, he said, his voice quieter now. But I need you to understand the stakes. This isn't just about your career or mine. It's about the future of this company. Naomi stood up, meeting his gaze. I understand that, Richard. But the future of this company depends on doing things right, not just doing things fast. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the weight of the decision he had to make. But Naomi wasn't about to back down. She had already fought too hard to get here, and she wasn't going to let anyone dictate her path. I'll give you results, Richard, but I'll give you the right results. I'm not compromising my vision. Kessler studied her for a long time, and then, finally, he nodded. All right, Naomi. Let's do it your way. As she left the conference room, Naomi felt a sense of triumph. It wasn't just about winning the battle with Kessler, it was about winning the battle with herself. She had proven that she could lead, that she could stand her ground, and that she was willing to risk everything for what she believed in. This project was her chance to build something that would last, and she wasn't about to let anyone stand in her way. Weeks passed, and Naomi Carter's vision began to take shape. The tech project that she had fought so hard to lead was now fully underway, with her at the helm, guiding her team through every challenge. The pressure from investors and the board remained constant, but Naomi had become accustomed to it. She thrived under pressure, and now, more than ever, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The team, once skeptical, had come to respect her leadership. They saw her not just as a figurehead, but as someone who would stand beside them, willing to fight for what they all believed in. Every decision Naomi made was driven by her unwavering belief in the project. She wasn't about to let anyone steer it off course. She had learned, through years of struggling and surviving, that the right path wasn't always the easiest one. As the weeks turned into months, the project began to gain traction. The tech community took notice, and the buzz around Kessler Tech started to grow. People were talking about the innovation Naomi and her team were bringing to the market. But with success came new challenges. The road ahead wasn't without obstacles. A competitor, a giant in the industry, began to launch a similar product. The pressure to move faster, to outpace them, increased. Naomi didn't shy away from the pressure. She knew that if they could just keep their focus and stay true to their vision, they could still win. She held meeting after meeting with her team, pushing them to think outside the box, to come up with solutions that would set them apart from the competition. The sleepless nights were long, but Naomi was more determined than ever to see the project through. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. The product was ready for its official launch. The team gathered in the boardroom, the tension in the air palpable. Naomi stood at the front, looking out at the group of people who had helped her bring this vision to life. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. She had worked her whole life for this. This wasn't just about the product. It was about everything she had overcome to get here. This is our moment, Naomi said, her voice steady but full of conviction. We've made something that will change the way the world interacts with technology. This is bigger than us. It's bigger than the company. It's bigger than the board. This is about leaving a legacy, about proving that we can do things differently. Her words rang in the room, and for the first time, Naomi saw the full support of her team. They were ready. The launch was a massive success. The product hit the market with a bang, and within days, it was clear that they had created something groundbreaking. Investors were impressed. The competition was scrambling to catch up. And Naomi? She stood at the center of it all, not just as a leader, but as a woman who had refused to be defined by anyone but herself. In the weeks that followed, the company's growth exploded. Kessler Tech's stock soared, and the once quiet executives were now scrambling to keep up with the demand. The media buzzed with excitement over the new product, and Naomi's name was quickly becoming synonymous with innovation. But even as the world celebrated her success, Naomi knew that this was only the beginning. She wasn't content to rest on her laurels. There was more to be done. The industry was changing, and she planned to be at the forefront of it. As she stood on the rooftop of the building that had once felt so intimidating, Naomi looked out over the city, her city, and felt a sense of peace. She had made it. Against all odds, she had fought for her place at the table, and she had earned it. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was a leader. She was someone who had taken the risks, made the hard decisions, and come out on top. And this was just the beginning of what she would accomplish. Naomi Carter had changed the game. She had taken control of her future, and she had made sure that no one would ever underestimate her again. In this powerful Black story, we follow Naomi Carter, a woman who rises from being underestimated to leading a revolutionary tech project. After a dramatic moment in a high-end restaurant where she saved a billionaire CEO from an attack, Naomi's life takes a turn as she is offered a chance to lead a groundbreaking initiative. As she navigates the pressures of the corporate world, she challenges expectations, defies odds, and proves that true leadership comes from within. This journey through corporate battles and personal growth unfolds as Naomi faces the ultimate test of her abilities. This Black story highlights the struggles, triumphs, and resilience of a woman who refuses to be defined by anyone but herself. Through her efforts, Naomi not only changes the course of her career, but also impacts the industry in ways that others never imagined. Black stories like Naomi's remind us that true success comes from perseverance, self-belief, and the courage to take risks. This Black story serves as an inspiration to anyone who has ever been overlooked, showing them that they too can rise above and leave their mark on the world. Naomi's journey is a testament to the power of taking control of your destiny and making your own path, no matter the obstacles in your way.